or the question we want to answer tonight is how to get out of a rut, or how to climb out of a rut. This is not a new question. This is a question that has plagued many people and has been attempted to be answered many times. Unfortunately, tonight, we're not going to give a feel-good answer. We're not going to give an answer that is easy, but we're going to give an answer. Very often in life, if there's a challenge that we face, a physical challenge that we face, and we find a potential solution, so we get very excited by the possibility. Sometimes we invest in the solution. So, for example, let's say it's a health issue, right? And we need to find a medicine or a weight issue that we need to find a medicine for or exercise for. And somebody discovers this new vitamin that fixes the problem. And we buy the vitamin and we take it every single day, and we're so excited. It's so simple and so easy. But unfortunately, not always do the results work out the way we plan. Sometimes, in our professional life or even in our personal life, we have a specific issue. Let's say it could be focus, it could be time management, it could be strategizing, it could be communication, or whatever the issue may be. So we go to a conference, a seminar, we read a book, we watch a lecture, we buy a course on Udemy or whatever, and we watch the whole course and we take the whole course. We read the whole book, and afterwards, we're inspired, and we are inspired by the material that we are, facing with or putting in front of us. But unfortunately, too often that wears off after a while, and we're back to square one. And this is not necessarily the case. This might be a generalization, but I could definitely relate to that, and I think that there are many others who could relate to that as well. I'm sure that there are those who whose lives are changed by these seminars and by these books. And there's no question that they're very helpful. But I think there are too many examples of us going through a more simple solution and not necessarily seeing the results that we're hoping or intending to see at the end of it. Or let's say it's a get-rich-quick scheme, or some sort of, how to be successful at anything, or whatever the solution that's being sold. The question is, why is that? Very often, what you find in these books or these seminars are actually very good ideas. Very often, the solutions to these problems are not necessarily bad they're not scams. It's good information. You read a book about success or a book about time management. The information there is very good. You go to a very inspirational seminar. It's all good. That's why it's so inspiring. It's good material. It's a system. It gives us tools that we could use. It gives us abilities to actually implement. Very often it's not necessarily bad stuff. So how come it becomes so hard for us to implement these solutions in our lives as often as they seem to be presented to us? I mean, you go to any book, you go to any bookstore, you go to any online course, or go to Kindle's ebook section. There are tons of solutions to just about every problem. You go to the Walgreens, vitamin section, and you have a vitamin for just about everything. So how are we still facing these problems? So what we're going to do is we're going to tackle something that's very interesting. And there's a concept in Hasidus, it's actually from Kabbalah, that is called a Isrusa de La'ela and an Isrusa de Latata, which translates as an inspiration from above versus an inspiration from below. And we're going to explain that in a minute. Let us start with our parsha, or not specifically our parsha, but we'll start with our text. So first, we're going to take a look at a text from Yehoshua, because since this parsha is the last Torah portion of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. So when we finish reading the parsha, the last verse, the entire congregation, the entire synagogue stands up, and at the end, at the conclusion, we all say together, "Chazak, chazak, b'nis chazek," be strong, and be strengthened. And here is the source of that. This is from the book of Yehoshua, right before they crossed the Jordan into the land of Israel, where Hashem was instructing them, La Yamush Sefer HaTorah. This book of the Torah should never leave your mouth. In other words, it should never leave your vocabulary. You should meditate on it day and night, and you should be strong and have courage. Chazak v'yamatz. It's a very powerful. These are very, very powerful words in Judaism that actually is the inspiration that throughout the challenges, Chazak v'yamatz is sort of the courage and the there's a Yiddish word called shtel. It's more than strength. It's like the backbone to stand through and hold strong throughout whatever challenges we might face. Having said that, let's take a look at, sorry, I'll go back up. I am sorry. Having said that, let's take a look at the explanation of why we say at the end of the reading of a completing of a book of the Torah, why we say the words chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek. So the verse is cautioning us that the Torah should never leave our mouth, continues with be strong and have courage. This is the source of our custom to announce at the conclusion of the book of the Torah, be strong, and we will be strong. In other words, chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek, because we want to encourage each other that even though we completed a book of the Torah, we need to ensure that this is going to live with us and be a part of us, and be a part of our lives and influence the reality and the daily aspects of our life. Okay, so now let us go into the parsha itself, and I'm going to come back to that text 3 in a minute. But let's go into the parsha itself, and let's take a look at some of the laws that we see in this week's parsha. So there's two interesting laws. Both involve the idea of dedicating or sanctifying a specific part of one's possessions to God. As it was known that the firstborn of every flock belonged to God. It either had to be given to the Kohen or as a sacrifice. There were different situations, but here's where the source of it is. No one may consecrate the firstborn of an animal, since the firstborn already belongs to Hashem. Whether an ox or a sheep, it belongs to God. So that is the first mitzvah, is that the firstborn of any animal that somebody owns is always belongs to God, and it has to be. It's basically it's a natural gift. It's already made whole. The moment this animal is born, it's already made holy. There's another mitzvah later on in the Torah portion that, let's say somebody has lots of cattle or flock. So what do? They have the tradition is that they would have like a branch, and the branch would have like a red paint at the end of it, and they would have the cattle go through like the fence, and every tenth one they would mark with red paint to mention this one Asida Yeh Kodesh. The 10th one is holy, and that was donated to the Kohen, to the priest, or to the Beis Hamikdash, because that was basically belonged to God. So the 10th of every, in other words, this is the tithing. The 10th of every flock or cattle belonged to Hashem. So there are two different parts of this mitzvah. One is that the firstborn of every animal was automatically holy by God. In other words, we didn't have to do anything. Just by the fact that this animal was born, it was already holy. And the next mitzvah is that a person had the ability to make the 10th animal within their flock holy for God by having them go through accounting, and then the 10th one would become holy. So these are two different sides of a very similar mitzvah. And this is the conclusion of our parsha. Now let us go back to the text that we skipped, and this is the text from one of the first books of Kabbalah. Some say it was actually written by Avraham Avinu himself. And this is the book called Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is the book of formation, the book of creation. It's a book that that nobody could really understand, at least no one that I know can understand. It's a book that someone who could understand it could actually create a golem. In other words, not almost a human being. It says that this is the book that the Maharal of Prague used to create the golem of Prague. This is a serious book of Kabbalah, and there are many, many secrets hidden in it. But there are some little tidbits that we're able to take from it that are actually brought down in Hasidic teachings, and here is one of them. And this is a very powerful point. At the end is embedded in the beginning, and the beginning and the end. What does this mean? Let's use the example of an architecture of a project. Just because I'm in the middle of finishing a construction project, it's very relevant to me. But let's say you're building a house, and you know exactly the kind of house that you want to build. So you need to find a plot of land that sort of fits your vision of your house, and then you hire an architect to draw the plans exactly how you want the house to look. And then you have to hire a general contractor and a construction company to actually fulfill the plans of the architect and the interior designer to make the house look exactly the way you want. So the beauty of your vision for the house is actually recognized at the end, at the full end of completion of the project. If somebody would judge your vision based on the beginning of the digging of the foundation, people wouldn't, oh, this is gross, it's just muddy, it's dirty, this is not a beautiful building. And very often when you have a half a project, very often there's a famous saying that to a fool you cannot show a half a project because they cannot see the vision that's coming from that's meant to be coming from it. So that first spark of a vision that you have isn't realized until the end. But also the other way around, the beauty of the end is actually found in the beginning. The beginning is actually a reflection of what you're hoping to see and what you're actually dreaming of in the end. So they both connect with each other. The beginning of something and the end of something have a lot in common, because the beginning is the spark of the imagination, the spark of the dream, of the vision, and the end is the full realization of that vision and that dream. And they're both very connected to each other, and they both bring out the beauty of each other. Having said that, I think there was actually a movie director where they were showing the physical drawings that he had of the shot of the screen of the scenes, exactly the way he wanted to look, and then they showed the clip of the movie, and it literally looked exactly the same. Whatever the movie director, the screenwriter, the drawing the screenwriter wrote on paper with a pencil, literally looked in real life exactly the same. In other words, they created that exact scenario in real life. That's called Notz Chilasim B'Seifan. You have the vision of this writer, and you have the reality of the picture, of the shot. There's something very powerful with the beginning and the end. Why are we saying this? Because let's go back to our Torah portion. We're right now talking about the end of the Torah portion, which is talking about the sacrifices to Hashem, which is talking about the firstborn of every animal and the tenth of every animal, right? But let's now go back to there's another law within our parsha that's also very interesting, that says, you have to choose the tenth of every animal to donate to tithe, to donate to the Kohen, right? So what might somebody do? They might realize, oh my gosh, the 10th one, this is a really healthy, fat, or strong, animal. I don't want to give this one. I'm going to switch it up with a different one. The Torah says, actually, if you do that, then both become holy. In other words, if you try to switch them, then both become holy. And you cannot use either of them for materialistic needs. They both have to be only used for holy purposes. And these are the commandments Hashem gave to Moshe on Mount Sinai for the children of Israel, and that is how the Torah portion ends. That is how the entire book of Leviticus ends. All right. Now let's go to the beginning of the parsha. Sorry, the beginning of the book of Leviticus. What does it say? Hashem called to Moshe, and he spoke to Moshe from the Ohel Moed, and he said like this: tell the Bnei Yisrael, that when a person from among you brings a sacrifice to Hashem, you should bring as a sacrifice an animal from either a cow or a flock. Now let's take a look at the Hebrew. For those of you who are able to follow in the Hebrew, this is really where the message is. Because if you look at the second line in verse 2 in Beis, in the second verse, it says, Adam ki yakriv mikem. When a person brings from themselves karban lahashem, a sacrifice to God. That is grammatically incorrect in Hebrew. The real way to say it would be Adam mikem ki yakriv. That if a person from you brings a sacrifice. So this is a grammatical, or seemingly a grammatical not mistake, but there's something off over here in this verse. So what does it really mean? So the Alter Rebbe explains, and this is really the deeper point of the entire book of Leviticus, is that when a person among you brings a sacrifice, person refers to not just the human being themselves, but the essence of the person, which is a part of God. This then is the meaning of when a person among you brings a sacrifice. It refers to a time when the divine inspiration of Hashem descends to bring the heart of the human being closer to Hashem. And later the verse says, from the animals you should bring your sacrifice. And this refers to the earthly person bringing himself closer to Hashem from his own end. So the idea is not that you bring an animal to Hashem. That's not what a sacrifice is. The idea of a sacrifice is that you are sacrificing your own animal, your own animalistic soul, your animalistic desire and instinct, your animalistic egotistical needs, and you're sacrificing that, you're putting that aside and you're dedicating it to God and saying, I want my soul to dominate. I want the part of God that's within me to be in charge, and I want to commit myself to God. And that is the true purpose of a sacrifice. And that's really what's happening here when someone brings a sacrifice to the temple. But there are two ways this could happen. All right, and the word karban, by the way, which is the Hebrew word for sacrifice, actually means close, drawing close. Karban is from the word karot. But there's two ways this could happen. One is, like we said, esrusa de la ela, and one is a esrusa de la sata, which the esrusa de la ela means it's top down, and esrusa de la sata means that it's bottom up. What is top down? It means that Hashem gives us a jolt of inspiration. Very often, a person could just out of the blue feel inspired. Either something happens, they see something, they read something, they watch something, or whatever it is, and they just get this jolt of inspiration. They want to do a mitzvah, they want to study Torah, they want to do something. In other words, the way you know it's a top-down inspiration is that you didn't work for it. You didn't put any effort to get this inspiration. It wasn't because of something you did. In other words, you didn't toil for it. So the very fact that you didn't toil for it and you're inspired means that it's a top-down inspiration. And it inspires you for a specific period of time where you put yourself into the mode of connecting to Hashem, either davening or learning or charity or other mitzvahs that you could think of. But then, unfortunately, it wears off. What's the bottom-up inspiration? Is where you work on yourself through discipline and through your own effort and through your own, creating your own personal drive in order to connect to Hashem. And that's what we call a source of the lisata. That's what we call the bottom-up connection, because you're putting in the effort. Your inspiration is your own effort. Why are these so different? So let's take a look at what Chassidus tells us. And by the way, this relates to the mitzvah that we have in our Torah portion. Because the two sides of this mitzvah, the firstborn animal, which is automatically holy, which is a designation from above. So that just happens. The animal is born holy. There's no effort there's no effort on the human. The animal is born and the animal is automatically holy. That is representative of Shrusa de Le'ela, the inspiration from above. Its sanctity is independent of any human activity. By contrast, the sanctity of the 10th animal is dependent on the person. And the person needs to count the animals to choose the 10th and to make the 10th one holy. So the first part of the mitzvah is completely inspiration from above. The second part of the mitzvah is the human activity, is the human contribution that allows the 10th animal to become holy. Let us deviate for a minute or two, and let us try to apply this to human behavior. And let's like think it through a little bit in our own terms and our own examples. When we wake up in the morning and we're committed to a specific goal or project, not often enough do we ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why do I care? Like, why am I, toiling to do this? So let's say it's something for a relationship, right? So So a person will say, well, if I don't do this, my wife will divorce me, or my husband will get mad at me, or whatever the situation is. So fear of consequence might be a motivation. Um, for some other situations, let's say a person is working towards a business goal or a financial goal. So that's their motivation, is that they want to become financially independent, or they want to get a job, or they want to reach a certain level. So they're going to motivate themselves to work hard. Another might be, let's say someone wants to be physically fit and start exercising, something that I need to start doing again. So they need a motivation, or they need something to sort of be that reason or discipline that gives them a sense of I have no choice, I have to do this. There's two types of motivation, though. One is where somebody else is sort of driving you towards where you need to go, and somebody else is sort of dictating. It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be a business partner, it could be a boss, it could be whatever. But somebody else is sort of pulling you in the direction that you're going. And it's the fear of consequence, or even the motivation for success, or motivation to impress that person that you're trying to accomplish. But either way, it's an external person that's sort of driving you towards that success. That's pushing you towards that success. The problem with that is that eventually you start really questioning, and you should, is this really worth it? Is it really worth it for me to go through all this just to impress this person, or just to make this person happy, or just to, is it really worth it? The best or the most reliable type of motivation is one where you yourself, on your own, without any external factors, come up with a reason to motivate yourself. Because then you do not allow an external factor to change your mind. And you know the reason why you're motivating yourself. So having said that, let's go on a little bit back to our case with our spiritual connection to Hashem. Let's take a look. Sorry. I want to get to a text here, so that's why I'm skipping these here. This is what I want to get to. This is a long text, but this is the key to what we're talking about. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it very slowly, but take your time with this. This is one of the heart and souls of the Hasidic philosophy, and it's from the Alter Rebbe. So we find two levels of divine service. One level is inspiration from below, when a person exerts himself or herself physically and mentally, and concentrates deeply with a humble heart. This causes him to merit the light of divine closeness. And in this model, there's an inspiration from below, which then generates an inspiration from above, because they put in the effort. So Hashem responds by inspiring the person and helping the person along by giving them a boost to be able to. Sorry, there's a little party going on here. All right. So when you put in that effort or that toil to succeed at your goal, to connect to Hashem, then Hashem will respond in kind. And not only that, but there's a much bigger chance of this lasting a lot longer and being more reliable and more legit, authentic, because you worked for it. The second level is when a person suddenly feels inspired without any preparation or work or effort. They didn't do anything for it. They just are naturally inspired. We see this often when people suddenly become inspired and experience intellectual and emotional excitement in their prayer for a period of time. Like very often, like they're just in shul and they're just, excited. The litmus test here is if you worked for it or not. If you want to know if it's coming from above or below, you ask yourself, did I work for this? Did I work to be inspired? And you know yourself if you put in the work or not. You know when you work hard. And that's the question you answer yourself. So when somebody is inspired from above and they experience intellectual and emotional excitement in their prayer for a period of time, without knowing where these feelings came from. But this inspiration is short-lived because it is an inspiration from above, designed to generate an inspiration from below on our end. What Hashem really wants is for us to take that inspiration and turn it into a permanent and a real, long-lasting ability to actually live off of it and make it long-term and make it a real part of our lives. The difference between these two levels is that when we have a genuine inspiration from below, as a result of hard work, it is enduring. This generates an inspiration from above, which shines in the depths of our soul because we prepared ourselves for it properly beforehand. And this in turn gives us the ability to continue the cycle with further inspiration from below. When we work for something and we put in the effort, then naturally we are more equipped to handle the inspiration from above, and we're more equipped to ensure that it's actually going to continue. But when there's no physical and mental exertion on our part, and we are fully reliant on the inspiration from above that we did not adequately prepare to assimilate into our soul, the inspiration can pass quickly. The force of inspiration is only in effect when Hashem provides it, so it can pass without leaving any lasting impact. When the force is terminated, the feelings that it generated disappears as well. So back to our original conversation about seminars and self-help books and courses. If somebody is not willing to put in the work beforehand, before they go into the course, before they read the book, if they're not willing to change themselves and change who they are and make that decision that they are now a different person, that they're going to be a different person, and they put in the work to be a different person, then the information that they're absorbing can actually have an effect. But the information alone is external information. It's external inspiration. It's not going to change us unless we already decided that we are going to change. Bottom line here is that only we, only me, and only you, and only the person themselves can make a decision that they are going to accomplish A, B, or Z or C. Nobody else could do it. And this was the problem with the Jewish people and the Israelites when they left Egypt. They were slaves. And they had the slave mentality. And Hashem rescued them and brought them with miracle upon miracles. And the sea split. And it says that when a maidservant saw the godliness, the revelation of godliness that a maidservant saw at the splitting of the sea, even the prophets of the future, the Isaiah and Yecheskel, and even Elijah the prophet, they did not see this level of revelation that the Jews saw on the splitting of the sea. Not to mention, they come to Mount Sinai, and there's even more revelation of godliness on Mount Sinai. And yet what happened? They sinned with the golden calf 40 days later. And they sinned many, many more times. Why? Because all of this that they're witnessing is external to them. They didn't work for it. They did not prepare themselves or put the effort in to be a receptacle for God's revelation, and therefore it could not stick. And that's sort of why they needed to be 40 years in the desert in order to actually be ready to go into the land of Israel as a Jewish nation. If they would go straight into the land of Israel, they wouldn't be able to be a nation yet. And this is also why we have to go through all of these levels of exile before Mashiach comes, is because this is all part of us preparing the world to be a receptacle for the revelation of Mashiach that can actually stick. So when it comes to our individual lives, we have to remember that there's nobody outside that could just see it, that could, even God. Because God can reveal himself to us, but if we're not interested, it's not going to help us. We have to make that decision that we are going to change, or we are going to be better. Hello? Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. All right, let's go a little further. So now, back to the beginning of our Torah portion. The beginning of our Torah portion, interestingly, says that if you follow my mitzvot and observe my commandments and perform them, Hashem says, I will give you rain in its time, and the land will yield its produce, and the trees of the field will give forth its fruit. And you know, I'm not going to read this last one because this is basically everything is going to be abundant. Your whole life is going to be, you're going to have security. And that's why I don't want to read it, because the security part is something that didn't come to fruition because they didn't, fulfill all the commandments. But here's the question. You would think, since the Torah and mitzvahs are spiritual, and fulfilling the Torah mitzvahs and connecting to Hashem as a spiritual experience, shouldn't the reward reflect the action of the mitzvah? And shouldn't the reward be a spiritual reward? And seemingly the same thing with the coming of Mashiach. Why is it necessary that the coming of Mashiach be in this physical world? What is this obsession of Judaism with the physical world of the rain and the fields and the produce that comes out of it? Why is that so important, and why is that considered to be the reward for our efforts? So the answer is the same answer as the first question that we had about how to get out of a rut. And that is that the physical represents our effort. It represents our ability, our decision to be something else, to be something different. I want to share a story that I think I shared a few weeks ago, and if I did, I am really sorry, but it's a story that's worth sharing over again. I heard the story from a great Chabad lecturer named Rabbi Shays Taub, one of my favorites. And here's the story. There was a man who was going through, there was a man who was in a rut, and he was going through a very, very tough time. And he was sitting in his car, and he was driving in Long Island, and he was just crying and crying, and he was crying to God and saying, I do not want to live my life anymore. My life is useless. I want a new life. I want a new life. And lo and behold, as this is a metaphor, it's not a real story, God appears to him in his car. He says, okay, I'm here. I'm listening to you. You want a new life? I'll give you a new life. But it's going to cost you. Well, it's going to cost me. What is it going to cost me? So God says, what do you have? So he looks, I have $25. So Hashem says, that's going to cost you $25. So wait a second, I need this $25. I'm going to buy gas. As we know, gas is now expensive. And I need to buy gas. Oh, 1 second. You need to buy gas for your car. You have a car. Now the price went up. The new life is going to cost you the $25 and your car. Man asks, I don't have a car. How am I going to get home? Well, you have a home. Oh, the price went up even more. Now it's going to cost you $25, your car and your home. If I don't have a home, where's my family going to live? Oh, you have a family. Now your new life is going to cost you your car, your $25, your home, and your family. And eventually, like he even mentioned his job, and Hashem said, "Yeah, that's going to cost you your job too." Basically, everything that he had was being part of the price for this new life. So finally, the guy says, "I'm not going to say anything else. I don't want to have to give up anything else." And finally, Hashem says, "Okay, you ready to make the deal? Let's do it. All right. Here's your new life. Now, this car belongs to me. This home of yours that you live in belongs to me. This family that you have belongs to me. The job that you have belongs to me. But I want you to live it. I want you to drive my car for me. But I only want you to do with your car what I want you to do, what I would approve of. And I only want you to do with your house or with your home what I would want you to do. So I only want you to bring the things into your home that are actually positive things like Torah books. And I want you to have guests in your home every Shabbat. I want you to I don't want you to have any negative, or anything that would be offensive to me. I want to be a home that I can feel comfortable in. And at your job, I want it to. It's my job. So you're going to go do it, but you need to represent me. That means you got to be honest. You have to have integrity. You can't cheat anybody. You have to be 100% honest with all of your coworkers and your boss and all of your clients. You have to. It's my job now. You're working for me. And that's your new life. What's the message here? Is that there's two ways of approaching the rut that we're trying to get out of. One is that we could say, could somebody else get me out of this? Somebody else has to help me, right? It's not fair, right? Life's not fair. I was dealt a horrible deck of cards. Someone else has to help me. And you're probably right. No question. You're probably 100% right. But the problem is that in this life, the way Hashem created the world, the human being, a person has to decide that they are going to change, and nobody else could help us change. People could offer help, and they could help in the process, but the initial decision, the initial work, the effort has to be done. Somebody else cannot exercise for you and make you healthy. You have to exercise. That's the number one point. The second point, and this is where text 11 comes into play. And this is where the story I just said comes into play. So let's read text 11 and we'll draw it all together. It is specifically the actions of the physical human being that manifest Hashem's deepest desire. Hashem's desire is to have a home in the lower realm. This is the reason why the reward for the divine service of making the world a home for Hashem is given with physical. That's why the reward for doing a mitzvah is given with abundance of produce. Because that's where Hashem wants to live. Hashem wants to live in the physical. Because the reward must be given in the place of work. So basically, Hashem is saying that I want you to work my fields. I want you to make my world a better place. I want you to turn my world into a garden. Why is this the key to getting out of a rut? Why was Hashem's new life gift to this person? What was he accomplishing? Because he was telling the person, you're no longer living for your own self. You're no longer trying to figure out who you are, what you are, and why you are, which is the most toughest question adults are trying to answer to themselves, which is usually what causes the rut in the first place. Now you have meaning. Now you have purpose. Now you're living for me. You live for God. You're here to make my world a better place. Now you're my agent in this world. You're going to do the exact same thing you were doing yesterday, but now you're doing it for me, and you represent me. And because you represent me, that's why you're going to get out of bed. And because you represent me, that's why you're going to make the right decision over the wrong decision. And that is how you're going to pull yourself out of your rut, because it's not about you anymore. It's about what you have to accomplish. When it's about us, when it's just about our own happiness, and when it's just about our own, status and our own everything else that we're worried about our own selves, there's a lot to be upset about, because there are a lot of things in our lives that isn't that good, and things that happen in people's lives that are horrific and horrible. And each person in their own level, to each person, it's a tragedy on their own level. Some have it worse than others, but we all know that there's some real horrible things that happen to people, and nobody's taking that away. But at the same time, the ability to say that I am living for a greater purpose. I'm a servant of God. I'm here to be an ambassador for Hashem and make this world better through the mitzvot that he gave us in the Torah. I now have meaning. I now have purpose. And the story that we've told, and I'm sorry to repeat it, but the story of Rab Mendel Futterfass, that he was a very successful businessman, and he was arrested by the Soviets because he was involved in supporting the underground Jewish schools, which were illegal under Soviet law, because they wanted to educate all the kids to be children of Stalin, and he was part of the network to keep Jewish education alive. And they arrested him and they sentenced him to hard labor in Siberia for many, many years. And while he was there, he was tortured and he suffered tremendously. And of course, they took away his business. And while he was there were a bunch of other businessmen that were lamenting all of what they lost, all of what the Soviets took away. This guy was a big accountant, or this guy was a big lawyer, and this guy was a big whatever. And they were all going through the terrible calamities of what they lost. And then he's quiet. And they turned to him and said, "Oh, you probably didn't lose anything. You probably were nothing before." So actually, no, I used to own this company. And they all knew that company. Like, you own that company? How are you not lamenting with us? How are you not upset? If you owned that company, that means you fell from you used to be a very wealthy man. So what do you mean? It was good, but then I was a servant of Hashem then. I'm a servant of Hashem now. Oh, then I was a servant of Hashem by owning that company and supporting, Jewish education. And now I'm a servant of Hashem in Siberia. In other words, my meaning and my purpose is not dependent on an external factor. That's obviously a very tall order. And that's why I said in the very beginning that the answer here is not an easy one. It's not a field goal. It's not a pill. It's not a magic mushroom. It's not something that's going to be a magic trick. But the idea that number one, the work has to come from us. Nobody else could do it for us. That's number one. And number two, when we recognize that we are living for a higher purpose and we put ourselves aside, then the inspiration is so much easier, because at that point, it's not about our own selves anymore. And we're able to finally let it go and not worry about how other people see us or care how other people see us, because we're on a mission. Let's go a little further. And this is why the rewards for the spiritual work is achieved in the physical world. It shows that the material world is ultimately spiritual and worthy home for Hashem. When we feel uninspired and work hard to self-generate the necessary inspiration, this is when we uncover our deepest reality, that we are all expressions of godliness. So we have to put in the effort, we have to put in the work. And when we do that, we'll recognize the fact that we have that soul within us, and that soul within us will get us out of the rut, because naturally it will remind us that we exist in this world on purpose, and we have a reason why we're here in this world, and the world needs us, and Hashem needs us. And when we keep that in mind, it moves us forward and it keeps us on our toes, allowing us to fulfill our mission here in this world. When we generate inspiration on our own, Hashem reciprocates with his own measure of inspiration, and we are able to develop a healthy cycle of inspired life of mitzvah observance. That is our lesson today. So let's hope that, yes, very often we might fall into a rut, but we should have the strength and the ability to put in the effort on our own with the help of inspiration of Hashem, and be able to recognize that we have a neshama, we have a soul, and we have a meaning, we have purpose, and we'll be able to climb out of it and fulfill our mission in this world and make the world better and ready for Mashiach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was very helpful.